There's a little bit of good news coming out of Nebraska. I mean, if you could call it good news. They have identified a way to cut their budget shortfall pretty much in half. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to the story that's happening in Nebraska, there's a lot of panic that the state is going to go bankrupt. And there's some saying it will happen in just the matter of a couple of months because they have a $400 million budget shortfall. There's a lot of different reasons for it. Let me tell you what they are. But a lot of it very much is self-inflicted wounds. And now they're kind of dancing around going, oh my God, what did we do? Nebraska is experiencing right now at a state level what we're all about to face at a federal level. So I think it's important to pay attention there because this is what happens when you give giveaways and subsidies and tax breaks to the wealthy and you do all of these things that in the moment feel right because they get you votes and they get you popularity and they get you all this shit. And then when you have to pay the bills, you realized you fucked yourself. And that's exactly what Nebraska has done. I think the number one reason that Nebraskans should be concerned is that they've lost their immigrant labor. Nebraska was one of those states that had there's a lot of farming, a lot of agriculture type businesses, and they use a lot of immigrant labor. Whether they're documented or not, does not matter. There were people who were not native Nebraskans who had moved there and were working there. Nebraskans, like a bunch of other states, voted for Trump, which told their immigrant population, we're not welcome here. Instead of waiting for the jackboot stormtroopers from ICE to come knock on their doors, the immigrants pieced out. We're going to go someplace where people will use our labor and will like us and will treat us with a little bit of dignity. So they probably hustled their asses to Colorado or California or someplace else where they could get work and they could be safer. So rumor has it that this was 60% of their labor force. And when you lose that much of your labor force, you've got no one to pick your wheat, you got no one to slaughter your cows, you're in big fucking trouble. So that's the start of it. They're not making as much revenue. They're not supplying as much food into the food chain, which, by the way, screws all of us. Our food supply is going to be fucked if this happens. So let's just say that. But they also did a lot of other things, right? They put in corporate tax breaks and they did all this other stuff. Now suddenly they don't have a pot to piss in. Their budget committee has gone back to work and they're trying to find places where they can find this money. And they've identified 165 million more in revenue that they can bring in. 65 million of it is from, well, let's just go ahead and raise the taxes on the corporations. Amazing how quickly the money pours in if you make everybody pay their fair share. But I digress. Anyway, they've also done some other things, cut some extra funding. They cut a major portion of funding to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, which is quite frightening for the people who work there and a lot of the research they're doing. Probably have to make a total separate video about that because university hospitals all across the nation are getting crushed right now because they're losing a lot of their funding. But one thing they've also decided to do was to take the cash out of their slush fund. Every state kind of has this emergency fund. And I get that they think, okay, this is an emergency. We got to use the slush fund. So they're putting their slush fund toward their budget deficit. I understand that. But what's happening is, in case you don't know, Nebraska is one of those, let's use the word socialist states, meaning they are one of those red states that gets more from the federal government than they put in. Okay, they get a ton of subsidies for their farmers. They get a ton of stuff. And sadly, there's a lot of people in Nebraska who are poor or even poverty level citizens. And they need government funding. They need things like Medicaid and SNAP benefits and those types of things. Well, when you've got the Doge dickheads going, nope, cut it all off. We don't give a fuck who starves. We don't care about poor people. We don't care about children. Cut it all off. What's happening is the federal government will start giving less to Nebraska. And Nebraska is going to be expected to pull herself up by her bootstraps. Not if they've raided their slush fund. If they don't have any money left in their slush fund, they can't help their hungry and poor citizens. So again, it's all self-inflicted wounds because this is how they voted and they supported an administration that was going to slash. They supported an administration that said, no more brown people. They did this to themselves, and it's very hard to feel sorry for them, right? There's a lot of people on here that are like, bye-bye, but it's a major hit to our food supply. I took some notes. Let me just tell you. They are the third largest producer of corn. They're a big producer of soybeans. They are top 15 producer of wheat. And I don't know if you knew this, but Nebraska, number one in popcorn. They're the number one producer of popcorn. We stand a risk to lose our popcorn, people. But that's not even what I want to talk about. They are one of the top producers of beef. If you've not, I mean, there are some exceptional cattle ranchers in Nebraska, and they provide a huge portion of America's high quality beef, but also pork, poultry, and wait for it, eggs. You think they're expensive now? You shut down the state of Nebraska, that's a big hit to the egg industry. Now, the what would be the cherry on the top of the fuck around and find out Sunday is that 43 days before the last election, Nebraska's state house made a Hail Mary to try to change their electoral college process. If you're not familiar, Nebraska has 5 electoral votes, but it's not a winner take all. 3 of the electoral college votes go to, however, those 3 congressional districts. So if 2 of those districts go blue, that's two electoral college to the Democrats and 1 to the Republicans. And then the other 2 are given to the person who the party that wins the overall state. So if the Republicans win the total state, they would get that. So last year, the way it stood to be was that Donald Trump would probably get 4 electoral votes. Kamala Harris would get 1. 4 out of 5 isn't quite enough when you're a Trump-loving, conservative, middle America white man who happens to be in the Nebraska State House. They didn't even want the black lady to get even 1 vote. Oh, no, 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 no. They tried to change 43 days before the election. They tried to change their electoral college process to a winner-take-all. And luckily, it didn't pass. There was somebody in the State House that said, this is dumb, we're not doing it. So it was dead in the water. But my point being is that this state is led and probably is populated by people who were die-hard, rabid Trump supporters. People who will throw a Hail Mary at the last fucking minute because they wanted him to have an even bigger win. And now they're crying on TikTok because they might go bankrupt. If you're a blue dot in Nebraska, hang in there, maybe pack your bags, maybe go to Colorado. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, and I'm so sad it's gonna fuck our food supply for a very long time. But you fuck around and you find out.